You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above. And it was so. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. And I'm honored to have as special guest the Hijacker. Jack, are you there, brother?
I am, Zen. I certainly am.
All right, excellent. It's been a long time. We used to do a lot of shows together on Revolution Radio. You used to keep me up a lot of late nights from midnight to 2 a.m. But I'm glad to have you on with show to us. We're going to speak about how, really about how you turned me on to the study of flat Earth and the biblical cosmology, and basically calling in on the shows and encouraging me to do this research, which I did, and I'm grateful actually to have done so, because it led to really the next 3 books that I wrote, a trilogy on this particular topic. And so if you would, brother, tell people where they can go to find your shows and the things that you're doing, and any websites or anything of that nature.
Right. Well, okay, Zen, yeah, I'm just pretty much down to doing one show. We used to do shows on Revolution Radio, about 5 years ago. You were a weekly guest, the most popular. And, yeah, that was a late night show. But so the one show that I do now, it's called The Dark Side of Purgatory, the true reality of this world. And it's on Saturday night from 7 to 9 p.m. That's West Coast time, Pacific Standard Time. So that would be more like 10 p.m. to midnight on Saturday night on East Coast time. In fact, this Saturday, we're going to have the one and only Zen Garcia, the guy who basically, with that book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, he was the first one through the gates of darkness. He was the first one to really bust it open and kick those gates down and come into that kingdom, which just freed a lot of people. I mean, just absolutely, the revelations that have come out of that have just been tremendous. In fact, sometimes I refer to you, Zen, as you're getting to like an apostle status. I mean, if you keep on going the way you are, you're going to become a modern-day apostle. But, yeah, so that's all I'm down to. I used to do a daily political show, and I still might drop in from time to time on Liberation Nation with Deacon John on Revolution Radio at 2 p.m., although I don't do it anymore. I'm kind of withdrawing from the whole political thing, and I'm kind of down to that dark side of purgatory, which is a no-rules show on Revolution Radio. That's an exception. The owner over there has got certain rules you can't talk about. And basically he said, okay, I'll give you the show. And I said, okay, no rules. He says, no rules. So we go flat earth. We go reptilian, serpent seed line, shapeshifters. I mean, I pull a lot from Zen's work, a lot from his books, a lot from his knowledge. So anyway, Zen's going to be on this Saturday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on revolution.radio. And so that's pretty much all I'm doing, Zen. And I go by the name Hijacker because I was in politics for, well, actually 31 years, 8 months and 9 days before I finally got out of it recently. And that's what I used to do. I used to intellectually, I learned how to use spiritual and political concepts and mix them together to basically interject concepts, strategies, ideas into political campaigns and change things, which you pretty much can't anymore. It's the way things have gone. I think it's all AI or demonically driven, but I can never do what I used to do. It's just everything has changed. But yeah, so that's it for me, Zen. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I greatly appreciate you, brother, and I think that you are one of those individuals that has a really good pulse on what's going on in world, and I really appreciate your accolades, but certainly I'm just a foot washer, just a servant unto humanity. I definitely do believe, however, that the Most High has blessed me with certain revelations, and I do try to share those with others to help them to, really make sense in this world. But um, what I do notice about your work is that you keep an open mind on everything, and really we have to, because what we are coming to determination on is that we have been lied to on so many levels that really truth is stranger than fiction, and it takes having an open mind to really make sense of the matrix of illusion parading as reality. And so for a lot of people, it's difficult for them to overcome in their indoctrination to even open themselves to new possibility. And because of that, they'll never be able to really grasp the larger reasons for our being here in this world, what it's all really about. And as far as the spiritual war against the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, the Illuminati, and the whole enmity between these two bloodlines as it plays out. But anyways, I want to turn it back over to you and let you tell the story of really how you encouraged not only myself but other broadcasters there at Revolution Radio to examine biblical cosmology, and you met with a lot of resistance. Even got yourself banned from the network for a time, and but you did reach, especially myself. And like I said, it was your encouragement that led me to, after I came to the truth of flat Earth. The flat Earth has key to decrypt the Book of Enoch, the firmament vaulted dome of the Earth, and my latest one, Paradise, Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation. And so I'll tell that story afterwards, but if you would, go ahead, brother, take it over.
Right. So let me give everybody a background. And you all pretty much know Zen, and you pretty much know about the Serpent Seed line, Sons of God, the different books he's written. So when I first I got to give you a little backstory, because it is a really unusual story on how Zen finally, because he was a hard one. First off, you have to realize Zen was educated, and he was an astronomer. He went to astronomy college, school. He actually took courses in it. So you were dealing with a lockdown mind. I mean,
Right.
Zen was tough. So let me just give you the backstory. So first, when I had Zen on, I had a lot of pieces to the puzzle just because I had been involved in politics a long, long time. I had seen a lot of different things, but I couldn't put together. It was like I had a jigsaw puzzle, a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and I couldn't figure it out. I had been locked up. As it stands right now, haven't been locked up for a long time, but for political and religious free speech, literally jailed, locked up 34 times. I actually kept count. So think about over a few different states whenever I would do my political or religious-based letters that I would pass out. The authorities would just come, no law, and lock me up. Anyway, so I'd been on the front line of politics and had all these different pieces, and then along came Zen, and Zen started telling me about this strange phenomenon that, not everybody was the same here. There was a world system. There was a God of this world that was in control. And the more I listened to him, then the light bulb, when he finally went into the Serpent Seed line, the two different bloodlines of the Canaanite, and that there's actually a war going on, which I already knew about. I already had a lot of these pieces of the puzzle. But finally, Zen, he actually gave me the piece of the puzzle in which it was like my mind I don't know how to explain it, but just imagine having 1,000 pieces of a puzzle on a table, and you can't put it together because you're missing one. And then this guy, Zen Garcia, comes along, and he goes, oh, by the way, this is what you're missing. And as soon as I got that piece, and I realized, wait a minute, that's it. That explains it. That's why that group of people, and that's why this judge and that judge, and that's why, all these different things. And I was able to just like put the whole puzzle together. My whole mind opened up once I realized that was the truth. And I was a very dedicated Christian. In fact, I was what you call a fundamentalist, pro-life, Zionist Christian. In fact, I was so indoctrinated and so immersed in that world. And I've already told Zen this. He laughed it off. He laughed at me because I guess he already knew there's people out there that felt like that. But if you had told me that what Zen was teaching when I was in that mindset, I'm talking about that really deep fundamentalist Zionist mindset, you got to realize I was so brainwashed. I remember our pastor telling me I had gotten this book, The Sleeping Prophet. You know who he is, Zen.
Edgar Casey.
What's that?
Edgar Casey.
Edgar Casey, right. I had just bought the book from a Christian bookstore, and I was so indoctrinated that this pastor of this church that I went to, he told me, well, if you read stuff like that, then it gets in your heart, and it can cause you to fall from grace, even if you read it. Those are demonic. You're not allowed to read that, the Bible. And so I burnt the book. I didn't even read it. I remember making a little fire and saying, okay, it was burnt. Basically, I was so far gone that if I would lived in the 16th century and somebody like Zen came along, I was like one of those guys that could actually burn him at the stake.
Right.
I mean, no lie. I would have put Zen on a stand. I would have thought I'd been doing God's will. I'd have thrown the gas on him. I'd have lit the match and said, let it be like incense to the Lord. I mean,
a burnt offering.
Burnt offering, right. So that's how far I was gone. So anyway, Zen comes along. He does this radio show. He gives me this piece of the puzzle, and I had always remembered, I have a zeal for the Lord. In fact, it's kind of egotistical, but I got to admit it. I asked the Lord for a long time because I was making major impact for the cause of Christ in the political realm, or what I would call the political realm, where the political realm meets the spiritual realm. And so, I even asked God, I can't find anybody out there on the front line who's greater, who's making more impact than I have, until Zen came along and he gave me this revelation of it. And then I finally realized, oh my God, I finally ran into somebody. In fact, I got emotional actually on the radio that night. I had to let Zen do the talking. Once I realized, wow, this guy's made more impact for Christ than I have. I mean, I hadn't come to terms with that. And so, anyways, if you go back and you remember the shadows on the wall, I don't know if it's Achman's wall or Fabius's wall, where a person is chained and they see the shadows. I was like that person.
Right.
I could see
Plato,
that.
yeah.
What is that? What is the name of that shadow wall?
Plato in the
Plato,
Republic.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And I was chained until Zen came along, and he unlocked the chain, and I was free. I finally got the pieces of the puzzle, and now I knew about the serpent seed line. I could see how everything worked, everything lined up. And so I started to leave the cave, but there was another chain on me, and that was the shape of the earth, the global earth. And it only took me, because I had all this other knowledge, about 4 hours of videos. I think I watched this guy, Matt Powerland, when he did a interview talking about, he was with NASA people, and they were all telling him what the shape of the earth was. And it was at some retreat, whether he was going to be brought into the club or not. And he didn't go along with it. He's not a Christian. Anyways, I watched him. I watched Eric Dubay, and then I watched Mark Sargent. And within 4 hours, I was probably the quickest flat earther ever. because within 4 hours, with the knowledge I had, especially with knowing about this reptilian, this serpent seed line among us, I got it. So as I'm leaving the cave, there I see Zen. He's chained. He's chained to the ball global Earth.
Right.
And I says, wow, this guy freed me. He just freed me. I got to free him. And so I came to Flat Earth. It was right around where my birthday was, right about April of 2015. I think that's the time where I knew. And so first thing I wanted to do was let Zen know. But Zen was a tough guy. When I called him up and I said, hey, you got to look at this. The Earth's flat. Zen, I remember Zen, he was almost thinking like, oh no. This is not like one of these other conspiracy theories, Jacker, that you ran into that, that Jesus actually lived like 300 years ago and we're missing like, 1,500 years of history and you're not, don't do this to me. Anyways, he didn't believe it. He just said, he goes, yeah, no, that's not it. But I felt obligated. So I called him again. I still, after several times, hitting him one after another, he just says, look, he finally leveled with me. He goes, look, I took astronomy. I know how things are. We have eclipses. Are you that stupid that you don't know when you see an eclipse? He says, come on, Jacker, you're going down a rabbit trail. And so this is what it finally took for me to actually make Zen look at it. So I already got the word from the Lord as a lieutenant. I'm a soldier. Anyways, the Lord told me, bless Zen. He told me, this is what I want. And so I had a real struggle with what was happening because Zen wasn't coming along with the flat earth, and I knew it. And I said, how am I supposed to bless him? And so the Lord says, take something precious like you do in the art of war. You're a warrior. And I says, what's the most precious? And me and Zen we both loved each other. We had a hell of a relationship. And I thought, that's it. I got to take away something that's important. That's what's going to make Zen wake up. So I remember writing him an email or a message. I think it was on Skype. And I basically, it was kind of long, kind of emotional. I says, here it is that you ask people to open their minds up, that there is a serpent seed line. You want people to do that. But then when it comes to flat earth, you won't. And, and then I went into, I've tried over and over, and there's nothing I can do anymore. And I'm sorry, Zen, I got to break fellowship with you, friendship. And I hate to do it, and then I even wrote in there, I thought you were greater than I was, but I guess I was wrong, that you couldn't come. And so I sent him that email and said, you're asking people to do what you won't do. And also, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm breaking fellowship. And it was I guess you remember that email, Zen.
Yeah, man, you basically called me out as a hypocrite,
Right. Oh, yeah.
Which that's exactly what I was doing. I was asking everybody to suspend their judgment when they read my material on the serpent seed, because you know how largely condemned I am for those teachings. And so, so it was the same thing. And I had to pay the favor back. And, that really made me look into the mirror and introspect. I really had to think about my stance on this. And even though, I took 3 years of astronomy at Georgia State, learning that was my science, and we went to the observatories and looked at the planets and stars and viewed things and learned about the supposed dynamics of the solar system and star systems and all of that. And I thought I knew different and better, but the more I examined it and finally decided, it's either prove myself a hypocrite or it opened my mind and look at it for, as at least 24 hours. And when I did so, it was very easy to discern that there was no curvature and that the earth was not moving. And so no matter what I thought about the shape of the earth, certainly the dynamics of the so-called solar system were not what we were being told. And so I had to reconsider everything. And it was the largest paradigm shift for me. And at that time, I was working on 2 other books, and I stopped immediately and began to study every day, just consume myself with studying the flat earth and the recommended videos. And then being a student of the extra biblical text and coming to this discernment, I revisited the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, which was a portion of the book of Enoch that I was never able to make sense of. And once I did so, all the pieces fell into place. And that was without a doubt confirmation from the Most High God that this was absolutely true. And so,
Absolutely.
therefore, yeah, then I wrote
Yeah.
about even the story, you turning me on to it. All that is part of that particular book. But go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, and it was a paradigm shift. I remember, I think it was just must have been a couple weeks later. I says, well, I'll go ahead and send them, a note or talk to him, and that was when the first time he says, I'm looking at it, Jacker. I'm seriously looking at it, and then the next thing I know, Zen explodes with one book after another. Then he gets this Sacred Word Publishing. I think it's .net.
Yeah.
Zen, right? I always get the .net and .org mixed up. Yeah, Sacred Word Publishing .net, and he starts just pumping book after book in the Illuminaries. And so the funny thing about it was, Zen came over to me. He unlocked me from my chain, helped me understand and get away from Plato's cave. And as I'm going out the cave, he's looking at and I unlock him from flat Earth, and we're both now out of the cave laughing about the whole thing. We basically freed each other. He freed me, and then I freed him. So, yeah, it was something else. And since then, I think you've done like 6 or 7 more books. The last was Sons of God. I think that was your 6th book, right?
Yeah,
I got
that was
one.
my 6th. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And what are you up to now?
20.
Wow.
I'm up to 20. I wrote my 9th book was The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. Then the 10th book, The Firmament Vaulted Dome of the Earth. And then I wrote the 11th and 12th book, The Great Contest, The War in Heaven, and the Enmity Between the Seed Lines. And then the 13th book was the Global versus Flat Earth Debate. And then my 14th book was the Paradise Sides of the North and the Mount of the Congregation. And then I wrote the Yeshua, Christ, the Infancy Gospels, then the Great Commission, a 3-book set, trilogy, the 2 Great Commissions on the works and the of the apostles, the 3rd about the end time apocalypses, and then I wrote the medieval Irish Apocrypha and the Testament of the Patriarchs and the Prophets. And so, yeah, that's
and that's also you got the Sacred War Publishing. So supposedly you've printed other manuscripts, right? I mean, you pretty much seek out in the world. You go throughout the world with your mind and look for ancient, old, archaic type writings to translate. So what's the deal about that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I always, have been a student of the extra biblical material, and so the latest books, I wanted to provide that material in book form and put them together in massive collections so that people could learn about and study and read this material, which they mostly had never heard about. And so that's when, instead of writing and compiling entire books on certain themes, I started to put together these collections and to release them as, many of these, like the Great Commission. For instance, the book 1 of the Great Commission contains the Acts of Paul and Thecla, the Gospel of Peter, the Gospel according to Mary, the Acts of Peter and Paul, the Gospel of Thomas, the Acts of Thomas, the Acts of Thaddeus, the Acts of Andrew, the Acts of Xantippe and Polyxena, the Acts of John, the Acts of Perpetua and Felicitas, the Acts of Philip, the addition to the Acts of Philip, and book 2 contains the Gospel of Nicodemus, the Gospel of Bartholomew, the narrative of Joseph of Arimathea, the Doctrine of Addai, the Gospel of Pseudo Matthew. We'll pick it up on the other side. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. And so to continue with the story, I had studied astronomy in college, and it was the science that I took during that time, and so I thought I knew different and better. And I remember when I first came to discernment that the flat earth cosmology unlocked the scripture in a way that I could not and had not previously understood, and that in re-examining so much of even the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, and then so much of what was in the biblical narrative, I knew without a doubt, especially those passages which affirm that the earth is in no way moving. Um, and so, yeah, I knew without a doubt that this knowledge had been encoded into the scriptures for, thousands of years, and that the deception of the heliocentric Copernican model, that there was a reason for all of that being established in the manner that it was. And so we'll talk about that as well. But let me turn it back over to you, Jacker, so you can continue with the
Right.
story.
Yeah. So Zen was invested too. One of the reasons he was so hard was not only his schooling, and this is what happens to a lot of people, especially in the UFO community, other different, you know, lines of thinking. The reason why even Christians, there's a guy I follow all the time, Richard Bruce on YouTube, and he knows all about the shapeshifters and reptilians. He lives in Los Angeles, and he's done some work, but he's like a really anti-flat earther. I mean, he just can't give it up. He just says, "You people are," he wants to call us loons, and I'm thinking, hell in the world, But anyway, Zen was invested. What happens, and this is what I've noticed, Zen had written a couple of other books, which included, Earth, and then Tiamat. Go back to your other works, Zen.
Nibiru.
Right, Nibiru. You were all invested, and when somebody writes a book and they're invested in a heliocentric model, a global type model, they won't give it up. That's why you see a lot of people, because there's a mountain of evidence for flat Earth. I mean, a mountain, and there's not even like a real picture of the Earth hanging in space. I mean, NASA actually admits it. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's one. We're spinning faster than the speed of sound. Once you start to take a look at the model. But anyways, Zen was very invested. He already written books, which means now he had to come face to face with, wait a minute, did I get deceived again? And so that's the hardest person to get to, is somebody who's educated, especially in astronomy, and then also have previous works which talk about Tiamat, and then Marduk. You talked about the Earth exploding, something, the asteroid belt. Zen, go ahead. What was that?
Right. Yeah. As far as the Sumerian creation story, I had basically examined that whole story, which it speaks about how Nibiru had been captured as part of the solar system, and because the Sumerian cosmology has encoded into it this heliocentric model, which shows you how far the deception goes back. 6,000 years with regard to the cuneiform text. But anyways, it tells the story of how Nibiru had been captured, and then it was brought into conflict with the Earth that was named Ki back then, Ki, and that one of the moons of Nibiru smashed into the Earth and split it asunder, and that half of it became, um, the asteroid belt, and then the other coalesced and became the Earth as far as the third planet in orbit around the sun. And so I had broken down and examined this. And back then, I interpreted all of that as far as the waters dividing the waters, that was this hammered bracelet, this asteroid belt, and that basically the Earth had been destroyed and split asunder, and that what the Bible talks about as Rahab, that this was all of that and how it was connected to the Sumerian mythology. And so I was bringing forth these connections, talking about the destroyer, the return of Nibiru, how the Anunnaki um, had established what they call as way stations, these different bases on Mars and the moon. They even speak about in their mythologies about Alalu, this one king that had escaped from Nibiru and was the first one to make it here to the Earth. And then he was exiled to Mars, and having died there, they basically carved the face into the terraform up there on Mars, and they were the ones that established all these pyramidal structures up there, which we see in Cydonia and all of that. And so I realized after studying in great detail the flat Earth cosmology that not only are the planets not Earth-like, in that there are no other Earth-like worlds up there, but that the planets are just luminaries. They're just lights, and they don't have anything, as far as the foundation of the Earth to live upon, to dwell on, or to land on. And I realized that the entire deception, all of this, as far as the Sumerian teachings, it was basically done to establish and support the coming of the Antichrist as an alien god and the return of the ancient aliens as our so called creators. And so that is the strong delusion and the deception that is being established even in this day and age. And it's all completely dependent upon our acceptance that all the stars out there are independent suns and that they all have planetary systems around them, and that many of them harbor life and could have evolved life in similar manner as what we see here on the earth, and that possibly the ancient aliens are an advanced race from some other world, some other galaxy, some other time and place, and that they evolved millions of years before we did and had high technology. And in visiting the earth long ago, that they seeded life here and jumped the gun on evolution. And so that's exactly what they want us to believe in order to sell us the story that the ancient aliens, when they return, that they are coming to save us from ourselves, and that they were the ones that created us in their image long ago. Jacker?
Yeah. So what Zen's telling you, the one of the hardest parts of getting him to actually take a look at it was that he was invested in it, like a lot of these people in the UFO community, other different types of community, and he had actual books. He had it all figured out. So when I kind of came up with this, I mean, Zen, he thought he knew it all. He was like sort of like a god of knowledge. He knew about shapeshifters and serpent seed line. He knew about Tiamat. He knew about, the Draco system and, the invasions and where they came from. And so, I mean, he had it down. I mean, he was like, in fact, I think it really was the wisdom of God when God said, You got to take what's precious, and you got to go ahead and basically call him out as a hypocrite, but then break the friendship, the fellowship, and just cut it off. And it's like, okay, alrighty. And then right after that, Zen started taking a look, and then the next time I talked to him, he goes, I'm looking at it, Jacker. And then I think the next time I talked to him, he goes, I haven't got time right now. I got another book I'm writing. I've had to set aside a couple books. And then he was talking about the luminaries, and I didn't even know this, that they were actual, the luminaries, Zen. So you're thinking that sort of like, human beings, we're sort of a certain species, and then you have like an insect, which is a certain species, and a jellyfish, which is a certain type of being, whales. You're under the thinking that the luminaries are a sort of a different type of conscious being creation.
I think that they are the angelic hosts, and that even in the scriptures, when you see Ezekiel, he describes the wheels within the wheels and the eyes, as far as in Ezekiel chapter 1. And in my opinion, what he's talking about is the what we see revealed in the star trails over the course of an evening. That all the luminaries, even the sun, the moon, and all the stars, they move in circle around Polaris. And I do believe that what Ezekiel saw was similar to what Enoch was given vision of, because he was taken to where Polaris is, which that is the seat of where the Most High God has established his heavenly kingdom and his throne. And from there, looking down upon the circle of the earth, we see everything moving in circle around Polaris, which is the one fixed star of the celestial night. But he describes in the book of Enoch and other places, in the Dead Sea Scrolls and other places, that the luminaries are the angelic hosts, the cherubim, the seraphim, and the opening, which surround the throne of God, and which all bow before His Majesty. And so that's exactly what is occurring. And then we see in Revelation that at the end of days, the luminaries will be cast down here to the earth. And in my opinion, that is the return of some of the fallen angels, the supernatural army, which will have part play in the wrath of God being poured out on the wicked and those not written into the books of life. Jacker.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, if you actually you can actually go on the internet and you can take a look at people with high-powered telescopes, and you can actually take a look at stars. Are we on the air, Zen? Go ahead.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, right. And so you can actually see these quote-unquote planets and stars are not what they appear to be at all.
Right.
But no, yeah. So Zen was very, very, very invested in it, and it's really a miracle because I've run into so many other Christians that got this, like Ken Hovind and all these different peoples, and that they're so invested in the construct of the universe and the cosmos, and what really happened with the Earth and the firmament. They just won't. I don't know, Zen. What do you think it is? Because I know you've run into it. Once in a while, somebody like a Rob Skiba, he was like in another paradigm like you were, and he finally broke it and came out. But Zen, what is it about a lot of these fellow believers? Some of them have got large ministries. Do you think that, because it's almost to the point now, Zen, where I'm thinking these people know there's too much information out there. They can just start clicking buttons, and I mean the evidence is like everywhere. Once you realize the Earth is flat, you start breaking everything apart. I mean, everything starts breaking. It's like a mountain of evidence for it. And then when you take a look at the globe Earth type model, they got nothing except like NASA and CGI, and the government saying it like, oh, so it's one hell of a large conspiracy. But I wanted your take, Zen, on what is it about these prominent and not so prominent. Some of them got smaller ministries like Ken Hovind, although he's come into a lot of money recently, and his whole ministry's back up and running. He seems to be flush with cash. But why do you think it's a spiritual blindness? Is there a spiritual scales on the eyes of certain believers, or are these certain ministries and ministers? I know a lot of them are of the serpent seed line. They will never teach it, but you can go and the anomalies are all right there. You can kind of see what they're about. But what's your take, Zen, on what it is that keeps believers, honest believers, from being able to even look at the construct of the world to see this whole insane stuff about flat Earth, whether it's true or not? Is it a spiritual blindness, and why has God blinded them? That's what I want to know. I mean, this is one of my problems I really have, Zen, is why people, that I don't understand it. What do you think it is? Go ahead.
Well, I think the large and most critical thing with regard to all of that, and the reason they are and unwilling to, because I was as well. I was very hesitant.
Right. Oh, I know.
Yeah, and so it's because it's just completely ludicrous, and we think it's ludicrous, and that there's no basis for truth within it, and we think it's just completely uh, moronish and lunatic fringe, and that this question of cosmology had been settled 500 years ago, by the telescope and Galileo and all these different scientists, Newton and others. But what we don't realize is that this has all been theoretical as far as the Copernican heliocentric model for explaining universe, and that really there's no basis law, that really it's all just conjecture and theory, and it's lies built upon lies, because the truth of the matter is that the real science, when you really examine it, the experiments like Sagnac and Aries failure and Michelson Morley, Gill, these kind of things, they prove without question that the Earth is not moving. And so, no matter what one thinks about, again, the shape of the Earth, it is in no way moving around the sun. We're not spinning at 1,037.541666667 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound and faster than a 45 caliber bullet shot from a pistol. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous when you begin to examine it. And then the other thing is that, and it's easy to determine, that there's no measurable curvature, that one can easily see monuments, Statue of Liberty, the lighthouses, islands, cityscapes, things of that nature, ships out beyond what should be possible according to the rate for determining the measure of curvature. And so it's an impossibility that you can see Hawaii from the mainland of Hawaii at 100 miles distance.
Oh, there's
According
one
to
more than that.
curvature, it should be. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, there's like Madagascar. They can see an island 247 miles. In fact, I recently saw something from Scotland, in Britain, where they were actually looking at the top of a mountain range, like over 500 miles. It was a very clear day, the way the atmosphere, because people don't realize the way the atmosphere works. we actually are almost fish-like in the sense that the air you're breathing is full of water vapors. That's why with dehumidifier can collect water pretty quick. But the higher up you go, the thinner the air gets. That's why a plane can't. That's why you couldn't have a plane do 9/11, come in at the building at 547 miles an hour. It'd be like, think about you trying to run on the bottom of a pool versus running on open land. Other words, our atmosphere is real thick. We're in a real thick where there's lots of moisture, a lot of refraction, that type of thing. But anyways, they were able to catch this mountain range like 500 miles away. Unbelievable. But I don't know. I don't know, Zen. I'm not really good with that explanation. That because it is so insane to the normal person, and it is. When you first start to look at it, you just think this is like crazy. But think about like reading the Bible. In fact, you brought it out in one of your books. I can't remember that you can't even read the Bible without it being a flat Earth model, in the sense that the eyes of the Lord go to and fro from the earth, or like Jesus says, "As I descended, so I will ascend, and that's how I will come back." I mean, what part of the earth? I mean, Australia?
Right.
I mean, are they going to see, like, they're not going to. So you go throughout the whole Bible and you just read all of the different scriptures, and you can't even actually read the Word of God unless you know that the earth is the construct of it's a flat earth model in the Bible.
Yeah.
So, but I'm really starting to see it. I'm really wondering, this gets to my conspiratorial side, Zen. I'm starting to think there's a reason why God has left these ministers and these preachers and these evangelists blinded to flat earth, almost as a warning to the rest of the believers, saying, look, if these people don't even know or won't even look at the second greatest witness for God, and flat earth is, the first witness being Yeshua himself, Jesus Christ himself, if they can't look at the second greatest witness for God, in which hundreds, thousands of atheists and non-believers, they at least has become to a creator. They may not have come to Christianity, but they definitely believe in a creator, sort of like Jeranism and a few of the others which just reject, coming into, Christianity for whatever reason. But I'm thinking that these ministers and evangelists, God has left them blinded for a reason, almost as a sign to us. I don't know. Am I being too harsh, Zen?
No, I really don't think you are. I think a line is being drawn in the sand, and that whereas, they can come to truth on so many other matters, that still, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter and the glory of King to seek it out, and that we are called to remain open-minded about all possibilities. And when it comes to flat earth and the cosmology, serpent seed, pre-existence, election, all of these things, most of the mainstream churches are shut down to the Holy Spirit being female. All these different esoteric topics, which are very challenging to the mainstream church authorities, but when you examine the scriptures, this is what they reveal. But again, they're not open-minded to opening themselves to new possibilities, and because of that, their students and those people that follow them are also closed-minded. And so, in my opinion, a line is being drawn in the sand with regard to truth. And I see, because now, I don't listen to anybody anymore. I just do my own thing. I realize that there are very few people that are truly teaching truth in the manner that, um, that I'm revealing it, or that very few others are really covering it in great detail. And so,
Yeah.
if they're not even going to, speak truth to power on all levels, I don't even want to take my time and waste my time listening to them, because if they're caught up and steeped in mostly delusion, why should I even bother?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of truth to that, Zen. I'm telling you, because I used to listen to certain people, but now it's come. You're right about a dividing line, sort of a quickening, sort of it's a separation, because what a lot of these Christian ministers, preachers, pastors, evangelists, what they're really involved in, because they won't talk about the serpent seed line, because they won't talk about the actual construct of the earth, and that this is a very, very special place. There's not trillions of civilizations and worlds, but it turns out that if you're walking this earth, you are very, very, very special to God. I mean, like, you are it. This is it. This earth, this construct, which when I have you on my show, Zen, on Saturday night on Revolution Radio, I laid out in my first sort of maiden opening. It sounds like you got a break. You want me to stay for the next hour?
Oh, yeah,
okay,
absolutely,
sure.
brother. Hold on.
Okay.
We'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. And I have as guest with me the Hijacker, and we're talking about how, both he came to Flat Earth Truth and then also led me and challenged me. It was either prove myself a hypocrite or come to this discernment. But anyways, let me turn it back over to you, Jacker.
Right, and I also just want to give a plug for Truth Frequency Radio. This is one of the only stations which you can openly discuss. Now, Revolution Radio, they're kind of letting it late at night, this type of subject matter come through, in which there was real big support for the station. The first night that I did it, last Saturday, it was like fundraising breaking. I mean, it was unbelievable how people responded. But you ought to donate to Truth Frequency Radio, because they are one of these only radio stations that will cross into these esoteric topics, which are, you got Mark Sargent, Rob Skiba, you got Zen, but other networks, like, you go to sort of a political station like RBN, and that guy's so anti-flat Earth, you can't even mention it. They just, a lot of these other stations, they'll just go, they go nuts when you mention it. But my point was then, is that I do think you're right about a dividing line. And this is what I don't understand. We can now start to see, like you laid out, what the great deception is. And that it is going to be like Prometheus, right? In which these other, basically, go ahead and give it in a nutshell what you think the great deception is.
All right, yeah, and I do want to give props also to Chris and Cherie Geo, the owners and the ones that established Truth Frequency Radio, because, like you said, there are very few networks out there that allow you to speak truth to power and to cover any topic without any kind of boundaries or any kind of, limitations. And so that I was greatly honored to come here and to be part of the network and to be able to share and speak about, as far as flat Earth, because it was such a huge, huge thing for me, and coming to this truth and coming to this knowledge and wanting to share it with others, because so many, most of the world is still deceived and lost and led astray with regard to this issue. And so I do give a lot of props to Chris and Cherie and to the other hosts that speak about and cover this particular topic, because, as you said, not a lot of platforms would even allow you to make mention of it. And most of them are controlling when it comes to such knowledge, believing that it will hurt their listenership, or that, their subscription support will dry up, those kind of things. And because other platforms, I've been, they've kind of warned me to try to keep me quiet about these things, but like yourself, I refuse to do so. And so
Well, you're kind of sneaky, Zen. You're able to do it because you got all this knowledge, ancient writings, and so you can
Right.
interwove it. I see your style. It's very cunning, Zen. Very, you get it in there, but you get it in there not the same way. It's like over the top frontal assault. But yeah, no question. Go ahead and donate something to Truth Frequency Network or radio. They are one of the few, that's for sure. No question about it.
Right.
No question. Yeah.
And the other thing also, just for the listeners, that whenever you do join, and as far as a subscription and get a subscription to Truth Frequency Radio, that if you join um, under a certain host name, that they do kick out some of that to the different individual hosts. So, for instance, if you join under my name or Rob Skiba or Mark Sargent, a portion of that money will be given to the different hosts, and so it also benefits us, and so we do greatly appreciate that as well. And the model,
and that is unusual, by the
yeah,
way. I know radio. That's for a platform, a radio platform to do that. That is like one of a kind.
right,
Almost 99.9% of the rest of the independent type truth movement type radio stations don't do that because the money's so tight anyways. But yeah, I'm surprised to hear that. I didn't know that, Zen. That's that's impressive. I'm impressed.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing that Christina again has set up here as far as Truth Frequency Radio, and it's growing exponentially every year, and there's a lot of really good quality hosts here speaking about a lot of different esoteric subjects. But anyways, with regard to that dividing line, I'll make comment of that one more time. And there was a comment in the chat room that it is a belief because anybody has had time to study this and to come to truth on this as topic, but there's people that have to be on the payroll and that are controlling things from top down, um, different individuals, and I'm not going to point out certain ministries or certain people, but certainly the whole Project Mockingbird and the controlled opposition, and if you want to, what Lenin said as far as leading a movement, you just control it from top down. That these kind of things have been, and they will speak about truth to a certain degree. They'll cover it when it comes to fallen angels or giants or that, but when it comes to other deeper aspects, as far as the synagogue of Satan and things like that, the serpent seed, the enmity between these bloodlines, they won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. And most
No.
of them have, ostracized me, they criticize me, condemn me. Um, and, both Rob and I, we are two of the most criticized personalities with regard to the alternative truth movement. And I think there's a reason for that because we do share truth in a way that a lot of people won't touch. And so I'm going to just leave it at that. But as far as the strong delusion, it's my opinion that this has everything to do with, as I said before we went to break, that the ancient aliens are being set up by, the History Channel and the Hollywood and the now all the Marvel superhero movies, that they were our creators or that they are a special race or that you know that the whole story of the Bible is false, that God now, I've heard this so many times now that Yahweh is Satan, as Jern teaches, and that other people are also jumping on this bandwagon. But they don't realize, again, the serpent seed is the key for deciphering, decrypting why it was that Yahweh instructed Israel to spare no man, woman, or child when entering into Canaan. That unless you have that knowledge and that discernment as to the reasons why he was waging war against them, and has been since the war in heaven. Um, even locking up the Watchers that rebelled against him, and bringing on the flood. That was to wipe out, as it says in Second Baruch, 409,000 giants were decimated by the flood of Noah's day, and that it was done in order to restore humanity to a place where they didn't have to worry about being cannibalized by these men of renown, these giants of old. And even though there were giants after the flood, most of them were wiped out, and only King Og of Bashan remained. And then, even then, he proliferated the what we see as far as the Philistine giants with Goliath and his brothers and those, that came about from their bloodlines. There were giants after the flood all over, and can still be found even in this day and age. We have stories of, like, the Kandahar giant, which special forces encountered, and which had to take down. That there are stories of, in the Solomon Islands, giants existing even in this day and age. I just ordered a book which I'm waiting on. I've been wanting to read it for quite a long time now, and I ordered it over a week ago, but I haven't received it. And it has to do with the Solomon Island giants, and I made mention of this just about a week ago, about how even the Japanese during World War II and the Americans in fighting in the uh, Pacific Ocean in those islands, they encountered giants, and that the native people speak about and tell stories about these Solomon Island giants, even in this day and age. Um, and so the book that I'm making mention of is called The Solomon Island Mysteries: Accounts of Giants and UFOs in the Solomon Islands. It's written by Abarian, Amarius Borian, and it's only like $12 on Amazon. So I do recommend people check it out. I'm waiting for it myself, and so hopefully I'll be getting it very soon, and then I'll be able to share more details of it. But let me turn it back over to you, brother.
Yeah. So speaking about the Great Deception, on how they basically are, through a global, heliocentric model, have basically set this whole thing up with universes, and we're at the part end of a galaxy, and there's 100 billion galaxies and trillions of stars. That ultimately, I think we are being set up in the Great Deception. I mean, I can easily see, Zen, in the future, and it's not that far for anybody to comprehend, especially everybody sees the UFOs, and we hear about, hundreds of thousands of people being alien abducted, and we know about the Greys, and of course we've seen the Skinny Bob footage, and we've seen all kinds of things. That it could be that you may see an incredible craft land, and then three big giants get off. One is black as coal, looks like an African with a beautiful fro. He's gorgeous. Then you got an Asian giant, also steps off, beautiful Asian. And then you got a Caucasian, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, 10-foot giant. They all step off and they say, "We are your progenitors." So, but it's all set up. What I don't understand, Zen, and if you can talk a little bit about this, these Christian pastors and ministers and evangelists, by them propping up this false global construct of the world, they're almost helping out.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. I know what their thinking is. I think some of them know about flat Earth, but I think some of them, it says, you know what? It's better that I tell people about the Lord Jesus Christ, Yeshua, and try to make progress that way than to go down the flat Earth road and take the controversy or even the serpent seed line. It's going to upset too many people. And so they kind of settle in themselves that this is where I'm going to go. I'm not going to go any further.
Right.
But these people don't realize that they're actually setting up large blocks of Christendom for the Great Deception, in which, all these Christians believe, there's all these kind of planets and aliens out there, and these three guys that step off a craft that are all beautiful, perfect, and they claim to be the progenitors. And go ahead, Zen.
Yeah, I do absolutely agree with you that those pastors and preachers that are not taking a stance on truth with regard to the biblical cosmology, because it absolutely destroys the Copernican heliocentric paradigm and the whole basis that there are other planets out there, other star systems, and that extraterrestrials or people that are evolved millions of years in advance of what could be, life here on the Earth, that they are and have been coming from out there, and that they're returning, that they came here a long time ago, left, and have promised to return, and that these are our creators, these are the gods, the Elohim, of the Old Testament,
Right.
which established humanity in their image, which is all completely a lie. But again,
Yeah,
so
and these
many.
Christians are setting all these other Christians up for it, because when eventually you get that full disclosure, and then all of a sudden you get these incredible beings stepping off an incredible craft, and they go, "We are your progenitors, and by the way, we can heal disease, we can heal cancer, we can do all, we can, everybody will have a global credit. It'll be like a paradise. All you need to do is just take this chip and kneel."
Right.
And I mean,
Absolutely.
the whole thing's being set up, and I just wonder where these Christians head at. I know what they're doing by they're making a trade. I know politics, but still, these issues about the serpent seed line, even the synagogue of Satan, the flat Earth. These are really important things to have any kind of defense against what appears to be what is to come in the not too distant future. I mean, they're releasing footage from webcams of a U.S. Air Force military showing these crafts. They're acclimating us on the late night comic shows, and it's. Have you noticed that, Zen, that we're getting more and more acclimated that this is like just normal, that these aliens and UFOs exist? Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you even have the United Nations. They have a committee to greet and to meet these beings when they return, and they also have the Vatican has come out and said that they would baptize them, and that they, because they're our star brothers, that they might be possibly closer to God than even we are. And so they're already establishing the authority that the ancient aliens know better and different than us. And then when you take a look at all the new age mythology out there that affirms that Christ is not the Son of God, but that he's only an ascended master. He's a divine teacher, like so many of the others that are out there that also um, brought, you know, knowledge and teaching and revelation to humanity over the course of different parts of history. That all this has been established to demote Yeshua as God incarnate, and also to uh, demote Christianity in faith, and to make it um, yield and bow down to the New Age mysticism that has been distorted, and which accepts and incorporates this whole ancient alien paradigm into its knowledge base. And then you look at all of these top-notch researchers, individuals like Michael Tellinger and others who, um, even though they've come now to flat Earth cosmology, well, Michael Tellinger has, but there's a lot of top-notch researchers out there that completely believe and buy into the Sumerian mythology and the assertions that, the Anunnaki created us a long time ago. And so, absolutely, without a doubt, that is part of the strong delusion, and that even in some of the quotes in the Christian books and the extra biblical books like the Apocalypse of Abraham, it speaks about the coming of an alien God, and how he would assume authority as Antichrist and replace Yeshua as Savior Messiah. And certainly all of that is being set up even now.
Yeah, no, I heard about supposedly the George Bush Senior and George Bush Jr. along
Right.
with Clinton. You remember them going to Africa?
Right.
And they actually
Meeting
met.
Marduk, right.
Right. Supposedly he claims himself to be the king of the earth.
Right.
And then we hear
He's
about
the
all these
yeah.
underground bases or whatever. So the whole thing is being set up, and this is just what I'm not getting, I guess, is why so many of these Christians in positions of leadership are just leading everybody down the road. In fact, I actually watched what they did to you, Zen. You were savaged. I mean, you were the guy, especially with that book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. I mean, you were like the first ones through the gates. It's like we're at a war, and you were the first guy, basically broke through those gates and said, look, no, there's a serpent seed line here. We're in a war. This world is not what you think it is.
Right.
And,
we're not all the same.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, you talk about the giants in the Solomon Islands. I did hear about that. There's a few people they're finding out, but a lot of people want to say that basically because of through generations genetics that the Nephilim, and I do believe they were of that serpent seed line, they've been reduced in size, and so there are people that look like you, act like you, smell like you. Now they're going to be like politicians and bankers and the Illuminati, the elitist, but they have part of that Nephilim blood within them, and it's fairly easy to see. I did want to make mention, Zen, before we come to a break, that on Saturday I kind of laid out my construct, sort of as your disciple, of the beginning, the war in heaven, the creation of the angels, then the war in heaven, and then the earth being created, the different dimensions. And I went through in my 2 hours last week exactly, how I thought things went. And a lot of it was your material. And so this Saturday, I want to go back through it, and then any place where you think that I made a mistake on like pre-existence, the war in heaven, the third falling, and then even some fairly controversial, I don't know if you heard about this kind of new one, that before the actual replenishing or the story of Adam and Eve, it is the you got a term for it. It's the age before this age.
The prior times.
The prior times, right. That there was actually giants on the land, huge trees, before there was a sun and a moon, that the actual glory of God from his throne, from the 10th dimension, actually shined right down, and that there was giantism on there. And some people, like the Dictionary of Truth and other different websites, they're finding like large mountains that look like it's a giant laid down in a skull, and giant islands that look like elephants. You've heard of that.
Yeah,
but anyway, right, I want to go, right. And so I'm going to basically go through and then kind of check throughout the war and, where we're at right now. So I want to give people a heads up that we're going to do sort of within 2 hours, we're going to go race through basically all of Zen's knowledge real quickly, from the beginning, the creation, the manifestation of Yeshua, the great light, to the war in heaven, to the other words, it appears that this earth was built to sort of finish the war that was started in heaven. And then we're going to go all the way through it down to, where we're at as far as modern age. So I want to give sort of a trailer, people a heads up that you're going to get everything right in there. I mean, I'm going to push you, Zen, on it all. Just really kind of
I'm down.
Oh yeah, it'll be historic. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm still not getting why these other fellow believers are blinded to it. And what happens to me, Zen, I got to admit, when I now run into, and I don't want to say anybody's name, I see you got a courtesy. I kind of don't, but you do. So now that I see see who they are and why they are blinded, I have come up with God has let them remain blinded with these scales on their eyes regarding flat Earth and sometimes the serpent seed line, but not all the time.
Right.
Almost like a warning that the person's not, what they're saying is not correct, because I can't understand why they can't just click some freaking buttons and they can find out flat Earth in about, like you said, you did it in 24 hours.
Right.
You said, okay,
Exactly.
I'm going to entertain this insane concept of a flat Earth because Hijacker is calling me out. I'll do it for 24 hours and I'll be done with it. And then boom, all your whole life, whole paradigm shift, all your books, ministry. In fact, everybody's standing in awe of you, Zen. You're like getting ahead of everybody. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that we are all disciples of Christ, and that just because I've been given a few revelations, I'm certainly no better than anybody else, and I'm not in any way any kind of uh, prophet or modern day apostle or anything like that. I'm just simply a scribe unto the Most High, and that I prioritize and take very serious my service. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. We've been entertaining and speaking about and reminiscing about our flat Earth awakening. Certainly, Jacker had preceded me by several months, but did encourage me upon discovering himself that that we had been lied to with regard to the cosmology. That he brought it to my attention, and after great hesitancy, and finally, either confirming myself a hypocrite or not, I decided to examine it and then embraced it as truth and have not looked back since. And it was, as far as the books that I had written, I did have to review and reconsider a lot of the things and to take new position. But we adapt with new knowledge um, and new incorporation, that we are forced to adapt to those things that we come to knowledge upon. And I don't believe that any of us should be rigid and just completely locked down to a certain belief or a certain way of thinking, or that we should believe that we know everything already and that we can't ever, like an old dog, learn new tricks. That we can always, and we are always, every day learning things new, and that life is about learning and embracing new possibility, and that especially now with so much knowledge coming to light and the spirit being poured out on all flesh, uh, it's everything that I learn now. I learn how much I don't know, and how much there is still yet to be discovered. And I mean, the cosmology is a huge one, completely life changing. And now when I go outside and I watch the sun race across the skies and circling from east to west and then back north to east, as described in the book of Enoch, I know how the day unfolds and how it is that the sun returns back to the east for morning and entering into our field of perspective, that it lights up our skies and sunrise. And so, these things completely make sense to me now. And the way that the stars move and circle around Polaris, and why it is that Polaris, being the one fixed star of the celestial night, no matter where it is, when you locate it, it is indicative of north, because it is the only, there's only one pole, and it's at the very center of the earthen plane. And it shows no matter where you are on the face of the earth that that direction is north, which is why navigators have been able to, find and fix their direction according to where it is and which direction they are going. In
Yeah, the star charts,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
5,000-year-old star charts. That's why they can navigate on the ocean, because they know where the stars are, what time they're supposed to be there. They all do that circumference around the pole star. In fact, I heard you've actually changed me on this. You mentioned before that when you used to worship and praise, and that you would, you would always. I didn't even do this before. It was kind of a Muslim thing, but you used to point to the east, like towards Jerusalem.
Jerusalem,
But
right?
now, right now that that God is in the north, that His throne is right above the pole star. I got a different take on the pole star now. I think it's actually Lucifer's base station, and I think there's dimensions above it, but I'm not sure. But anyways, you said that now when you pray and you kneel before God and worship Him, you actually go north. And I've actually adopted that, as well as sleeping. Actually, some of this New Age stuff. Well, maybe they're right about sleeping towards the north. Maybe that's the way you should have your head pointed to. So I have to move the bed around now. I mean, it's kind of funny. But anyways, So when we do the show Saturday nights, I'm going to go through all this type of stuff, and I'm really going to push it because I want it to be jam packed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. Now,
and where can people go? Again, just Revolution Radio. Is it Studio A or Studio B? It's freedomslips.com.
Right. I think they changed it to revolution.radio. I think that's the way you get on it now. Maybe you can still go to freedomslips.com. I'm not sure. I can't really go to their chat room because there's so many people that are in the chat room, and they don't like basically what I'm talking about. I know you got a following, Zen, but whenever I go, I get banned. Believe it or not. But
they don't like what I talk about either.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can't. I don't look at a chat when I do radio.
Yeah,
I just can't.
You're smart.
But anyways, it'll be 7 to 9 Saturday night, and that's 7 to 9 p.m. and that's Pacific time, and I guess that would be 10 to 12 your time, right, Zen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is not too late for you, right? I mean,
no, not at all. A lot better than midnight to 2 a.m. like we used to do.
Oh yeah. Well, you were a soldier. Unbelievable. You did a lot of shows. So, anyways, then I do got to say this, and it's one of these things I got to publicly say, and so it's kind of a sin of mine, and it's not a bad sin, but it is a sin, and so you got to confess one to another, and this is one of those things. But so, anyways, then I've spent 30-some years in politics on the front line, all the muck and mire, and being locked up, and I'm kind of coming to the end of my life. I'm almost turning 60, and when you get kind of that age, you kind of turn and look back, and you think, did I serve God young enough? Was I zealot enough? Was I too selfish? Did I lay my life down? And all the different things. Then you kind of think about,
right,
like, if you have any regrets. And so I can kind of see now I'm coming up on death. It may not be for 5 years, maybe 10. I might get lucky 20 years, but I can see it now. And so I look back, and here's my sins, and is that you're the only guy that I got envy. I actually have envy in my heart, because I think about it, and I've actually said to God, I spent my life in the muck and mire and all the crap of politics, and here it is, Zen. He gets the wisdom of God, coming off these books, and he's got a publishing company. He's getting ancient manuscripts. He gets to immerse himself and bathe himself in ancient writings and scriptures. I mean, you are really blessed, Zen. I mean, I got kind of thinking and comparing, and I had to confess it to God that why do I got envy? This is the only guy I got envy against. Everybody else, I'm probably a little too prideful. thinking, I made more impact than they did. But so I've had this envy, and then God finally said to me, well, would you trade, Timothy, your hell and what you accomplished for the hell that Zen has gone through? And so I got to thinking about it, and most people, they may know or may not know, but you actually got your neck broken and became a quadriplegic.
Right.
And you even said that maybe without that, you wouldn't have been able to do everything. And I said to the Lord, I don't think I could. I don't think I would trade my hell for His. And He goes, there you go. That's why He made more impact. That's how it works. You go as far as you want to go. And so, anyways, I had to confess that to you, Zen, that I do, or I did, probably still do, harbor some envy that, how you spent your life versus now I look back how I spent mine. And anyways, I had to say it. It's one of those kind of public things you got to do when you're Zen understands what I'm talking about. Anyways, go ahead, Zen.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, brother. And I do really consider myself to be greatly blessed. And even though I am in a wheelchair and that I do deal with disability on a daily basis, but still, I consider myself to be greatly, greatly blessed and to have the time.
Or you wouldn't trade it, would you, Zen?
No, I wouldn't.
You got no regrets.
Everything is for a purpose and then for a reason. And because it took me out of the carnal aspects of the life that I was living back then, and I don't believe that I would have came to be um, where I am with the knowledge and the discernment that I have, and also with my focus on the kingdom rather than the things that I was doing back in the day, which I was fully living a life of sin and
I've seen pictures of you, Zen. You were good looking. You were in the martial arts. You were young, healthy, strong. Probably had the girls you wanted. I mean, I've seen a couple of younger pictures of you, and complete. I don't think you would have either, Zen. You would have, you would have definitely been a different course, but.
I was running.
But anyway, I don't have any regrets, Zen. But I don't think you have any major regrets either, huh?
No, I don't. And but certainly I don't wish anybody to have to go through the life that I did, as far as being brought to my knees before I could be, brought and led and taught, and then have an open and willing heart to hear the Most High God. But back then, I just wanted to do my own thing. And even though I felt that, I was a spiritual person, still I was rampant in sin and running just crazy. And so I'm grateful to have relationships now that I have with people, and the honor and the respect that I do, and with individuals, and also with my family. Like, my son is also being led by Spirit, and also has the gift of discernment and studies prophecy and the scriptures in a way that most people don't. And so I'm grateful that he also has that desire. And in my whole family, my daughter-in-law, and all of us starting Sacred Word Publishing together, and the people that have come to be part of that, Carol and Laurel, Austin, and another friend, Jill, and all the people that have helped with that. I mean, it has really blessed our lives. We are really reaping the fruits of what we are doing in serving the kingdom. And it's a beautiful thing to watch grow and evolve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Your son, an incredible Christian, and here I'm getting his envy back up. I mean, I've got lots of sons, and I got a daughter, and they're spiritual. They love the Lord, but some people, I just wish they have more zeal. And I do notice your son. He's got a zeal there. He's a beautiful wife, Joy. I think that's my daughter's name, actually.
Right. Yeah.
But so. Anyways, Zen, before I end up sending it again, getting more envious, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So it's like you talk about the dimensions, that there's like 10 or 11 dimensions before we come to this flat Earth. So we got the firmament, and then there's various dimensions that go up. I looked at a scripture the other day, and Jesus said, I saw Satan as lightning.
Right.
He didn't say like lightning. Jesus says, I saw Satan as lightning fall from heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, when Satan was actually cast down and he had his light and mortal body, was there some kind of transformation to where he came through dimensions and he only could come through once he was thrown to this earth as like lightning? That what Jesus was saying was he really was as lightning, electricity, light?
Uh-huh.
What's your take on that scripture?
Yeah, I absolutely. Again, in our spiritual embodiments, we are all light. Even, the scriptures talk about how even Satan can dress himself as an angel of light. The angels are the stars, like the stars that we see in the night sky. They are the celestial hosts, and they are composed of light, because that Christ is the light of the world, and He is the light within us. And so, yes, in our highest bright natured immortal status, we are light, just like Yeshua is. And everything at its core, and directly from the source, is light and has that embodiment. But yes, as we step down through frequency and vibration, sound and wavelength, we take on, and our bodies are composed of dust and are physical in nature. And so when our spirits are merged with our bodies, we become then binary souls. But yes, when Yeshua spoke that in Luke chapter 10, verse 18, seeing Satan as an angel of light, as lightning cast down from heaven, that's exactly what happened. That he was in fact lightning that was cast down, and that the angels, again, like shooting stars, that they are and were the stars, just the celestial host of the evening. And so it also speaks about, and people can find this in a book called The Testament of the Patriarchs and the Prophets, in a section on the giants, that when the angelic beings and the celestial hosts, when they stay here for a certain period portion of time, that they begin to take on physical embodiment, and they get caught, trapped up in the flesh. And even, not saying that the Sumerian stories are all, based in truth, but some of it is. And they even speak about how when they found themselves here and began to live here and to develop civilizations here, they took on the characteristics of flesh form. And even the Watchers, when they left their first estate, which was the second incursion of the angels, when they left their first estate during the time of Yared, they also took on physical embodiment, and that's why they were able to copulate with the daughters of Cain, and they, then brought forth the men of renown, the giants, as a hybrid race. And so these things are based in fact. And another thing with regard to even Lucifer and the one third of the angels of the Most High, when they were cast down during the second day, they then had death pronounced over them, and they became and were locked up in physical embodiment. And so when they were cast here to the earth, just like humanity, they also lost their bright nature and they came under the authority of death. And that's why it says in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 that Lucifer is a man. That is this not the man that, did shakes the worlds and shakes the kingdoms, And so, yes, he is a man. And it even says that at the end of days, when he is annihilated, and this will kill him in the sight of kings and his bloodline, which are those that sit on the thrones of the world today. Which is why in Isaiah 14 it speaks of him as an abominable branch. Which an abominable branch, we know that humanity is a family tree, but that his children, the sons of Belial, the children of perdition, they make up one half of the family tree of humanity. But there are literally two bloodlines here, the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. And so it says also in that chapter in Isaiah 14 that whereas he wanted to exalt himself above the stars and the clouds of God and to be like the Most High, he was cast down to the sides of the pit and he was banished into the interior of the earth. And so his realm, the devil sits in Sheol. He rules from the interior of the earth. Even in the book of Job in chapter 1, Satan, when the council of the mighty is convened and the sons of God come and Satan comes from amongst them, God asks him, where hast thou been? And he says, walking to and fro within and on top of the earth. And so his domain is in the interior. When they died and passed off down into the interior of the earth to free them to New Jerusalem to be baptized and then to be returned to their former estate. And so all these things are absolutely biblical. And, the whole thing with even what we consider to be the vampires, and even in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, it tells us that these serpent-headed, these reptilian beings, that they have now taken over the bodies of the council of man, and they rule over man. And so, without a doubt, this is what has happened. And they are like vampires. They don't die after one lifetime, but they continue to transpose themselves and to possess, especially the elites that give them over to such possession. And at the higher levels, they do these rituals where they are mixing with the fallen angels, and they, like vampires, they step into their bodies and rule through them, and they are possessed by them. And so this is what has happened and will continue to happen until the 7,000 years of the Second World Age are over, and then judgment will be brought upon them, and then they truly will die. We'll talk about that more on Saturday.
Right, yeah. And so, two questions. It looks like we only got time for maybe one more. But one is, do you think that there's the Canaanite bloodline and the leaders, there's actually an internal civil war on which cabal gets control? But then the other one is, when we look at the stars and and we know that they are the illuminary, the angelic, when we see them, are we actually looking and that they actually glow or reflect the glory of God on the other side of the firmament and the dimensions, so that sort of like peepholes looking through, that they're actually little peepholes, or the reason why they have that light and you can see is that they can actually look into our dimension, and when you actually look at the light of a star, that what you're looking at is almost a reflection of the glory of God on that angelic being. Do you think there's something to that, that they're actually trans-dimensional, and that when you actually look at a star, it's almost like a peephole, and they're reflecting something coming from the throne of God? What's your take on that? Just one of those wild theories I've got. Go ahead.
Well, they are, again, they have the light of Christ within them. The Christ is the light of the world, and He is the source of life for all things. And so, consciousness and imagination and thought, all those things that we've been blessed to have, and that is now married to our mortal flesh bodies, the angelic hosts are still in their bright natured form. And so, yes, they are angels of light, and they do reflect the divinity that has been given to them by God. But the stars are, I believe, within the firmament. It says in the book of Genesis that they were placed within the firmament. And so the celestial hosts, and especially the fallen angels, they are trapped by the firmament. And I believe because judgment is coming upon them, and that at the end of this age, they will be annihilated as if they had never been. And so all that is coming, which is why when the demon saw Yeshua, he recognized him as judge, and he asked him, "Have you come to torment us before the time?" And so, yeah, all of that. As I said, we'll talk more about that when we do the show on Saturday. And so, I do
Well,
invite
thanks.
everybody to join us. Freedomslips.com. Once again, we have had the Hijacker with us this evening. Brother, did you want to give out your contact information, or again the radio
No,
broadcast?
no, Zen, I'm kind of at the end. So I got this last bit I do on Revolution Radio, and I'm kind of shot up. You get to the end, sort of, and you look back and you think, what more good can you do? And so, no websites, no nothing. That's I'm kind of time to step out unless God has something for me. That's kind of where I'm at. So thanks so much for having me, and I look forward to having you here in about 2 days, Saturday night, 7 to 9, of revolution.radio. That's Pacific Standard Time, 10 to 12 Eastern Time. Thanks, Zen, and God bless you. I'll be talking at you.
All right, God bless you too. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate all of you so very much, and looking forward to further discourse. Be blessed all. Good night.